Welcome back, MTN Giants Podcast. I feel like a fool for being even slightly concerned about the Giants going up 7-0 in this game, because the game ended with the Falcons scoring 34 unanswered points and won this game 34-7. And then later, to make things even better, to top off this perfect day for the Giants, the Raiders won a game. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think it was 19-14. The Raiders dropped down to like the 6th pick, meaning that our Giants have the first overall pick right now. And as long as they lose out, which they are projected to do, I do want to see the spread. They're plus 8.5 next week versus the Colts. They're at Philly the final week, so 2 more games. The Giants haven't won at Philly in, I think, over a decade. I think it was 2013. So as long as those 2 things happen, the Giants get the first overall pick. They get their shot at either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I would be astonished if it's somebody else. So it will be one of those 2 guys in a Giants uniform next year as long as they don't mess this up. So it was a great day. We saw some rookies play well. Tyrone Tracy, toe tap in the end zone, great looking play. But then the rest of it was just Michael Penix making great throws. Joe Shane looks like a jackass. John Mara had a camera on him and looked disgusted. We saw some great things. The Giants also lose their 10th game in a row, which is a franchise record. Obviously not a good record that you want to have. But this team is setting a lot of bad records. And to make it even better, it's their 100th season. So if you're picking a time to have your possibly historically worst season in franchise history, this is quite the time to do it. There was a graphic today brought up by, I guess it was Fox that had the game today. So this is based on Giants history. The last time they had the worst outright record in the NFL was 1966. The last time the Giants were winless at home was 1974. The last time they were winless in their division was never. The Giants were never winless in their division in the NFC East. So if they lose to Philly the final week, which once again, as long as Philly plays their guys, and even if they didn't, they'd probably still lose, the Giants will set a record for never beating a division opponent throughout the regular season. And they've held the number 1 draft pick. Last time they did it was 1965. So they are setting all types of different records here from the 60s, 70s, 60s again, and something that's never happened before. And of course, the Giants will try to spin it that Joe Shane should be brought back, and we'll get into that later. Just a lot of clownery and foolishness going on here. But unfortunately for Brian Daboll, he's probably done. So we'll get to that stuff. We'll talk about the game for a bit, talk about big picture stuff. I'm obviously hyped about getting the first overall pick. And I made the finals in my longest running fantasy league, so I'm happy about that. So just a great Sunday so far. So hope you guys enjoy. Leave a like. Happy holidays to everybody, by the way. And if you've stuck around the entire season, if you watch almost every video, I really appreciate you. I know it's tough, and I know that people that make content like myself and some other people, like, I know it kind of brings some therapeutical aspects to it, and it's tough to watch a team like this week in and week out. I had another Giants friend ask me the other day, do you still watch the Giants? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, why? Like, I don't understand. I'm like, I don't know. It's something I do. I like to watch them. I want to know what's going on. It's also a train wreck. I want to see if they get the first overall pick. There's reasons for it, but like, I don't know. It is tough to watch, obviously. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy the video. Leave a like. Let's get into it. A pretty ugly offensive day for the Giants. Only 234 offensive yards. They had 4.3 yards per play. Not where you want to be in today's NFL. 85 penalty yards. So this is now 3 of the past 4 Giants games dating back to the game versus Dallas on Thanksgiving, where they've had 10 plus penalties in a game. They didn't last week, but the 2 other games before that, they did. And that was a franchise record. So 3 times in the past 4 games to have 10 plus penalties is pretty unbelievably bad. And of course, it reflects on Brian Daboll, the coaching staff, but even some of the players, like Evan Neal is horrendous. I saw Illuminor had one. Greg Van Roten had maybe the worst looking game I've seen from a right guard since, like, I don't even know, maybe like John Jerry or something. It was bad. And then, of course, you had 3 turnovers. The Giants had so many bad turnovers in this game. I actually started the Falcons defense today, so it was glorious for me. But watching like Matthew Judon run back with a pick 6, it was crazy. The other pick 6, which I forget who had it now. Oh, that was the Jesse Bates one. He picked off a pass going to Wan'Dale Robinson. He was sitting down basically waiting for a curl, and Drew Lock was staring it down for 3 seconds, and a veteran like Jesse Bates is going to see that every single time. It's just a matter of does he catch it or does he not? And unfortunately for Drew Lock and the Giants, he caught it and went all the way. The Giants' rushing attack was not great. It was basically just Tyrone Tracy, but didn't really do much. Only 7 carries for 26 yards. They were down for most of the game, so they pretty much abandoned the run in the second half. Receiving-wise, Malik Neighbors had his usual game, I guess, ever since like week 3, where he was amazing the first 3 weeks, or really weeks 2 and 3. But since then, it's basically been this type of stat line: 7 catches for 68 yards, had 14 targets. Wan'Dale Robinson actually had 7 catches for 62 yards. He's been used less since Daniel Jones left, but this was a nice game for him. Darius Slayton had that nice catch, had a couple guys miss on tackles for 21 yards. But aside from that, really nobody did anything. Tyrone Tracy did have 4 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown, as I mentioned before, so he had a pretty nice game for his standards. Defensively, it wasn't that pretty. A lot of guys running open. I really feel like Michael Penix played a great game. The interception, obviously, for Penix was not his fault whatsoever. It's just Kyle Pitts being Kyle Pitts. I really cannot believe how bad Kyle Pitts is. It makes no sense. He was like supposed to be like the generational tight end coming out of Florida, and he had a great rookie year. I mean, it was a lot of yards, not many touchdowns, but the guy has just I really think he's regressed ever since. I don't know why, but it really seems like Brock Bowers is what Kyle Pitts was supposed to be. Darius Muasau came in because Micah McFadden got hurt, and Muasau actually played well. So McFadden left with, I think, a neck injury, never came back in the game. I saw Drew Phillips had some nice moments, a great wrap-up on Bijan in the flat. I saw Cordell Flott make a couple nice plays, had an interception too, which was the Kyle Pitts play, where it pretty much landed right in his hand, so I can't really say that's a great play by Flott, but at least he caught it. He did have a pass deflected too, so yeah, I thought Cordell Flott played a pretty nice game for the most part. I feel like Dane Belton had a couple nice plays in this game, and even Kayvon had some pressures, but nothing fantastic for the former 5th overall pick. So going through these specific plays now, there were a couple drops by the Falcons on the first drive of this game. The Falcons got the ball first. The fans were hyped, obviously. But a couple drops, it was, I think, Ray McLeod and Drake London, and they had the punt eventually. Not punt, it was actually a missed field goal by Riley Patterson. So their usual kicker, Younghoe Koo, was out with some type of injury. I forget what it was. But Riley Patterson, the backup, he might have kicked for like Detroit a couple years ago, but he missed from 43. The Giants offense went 3 and out. They had like that naked bootleg to Neighbors, picked up 6 yards, but then the other 2 plays were incompletion, so they punted. Next Giants defensive drive, there was a nice play by Kayvon Thibodeau. He actually was able to trip up Michael Penix as he was taking off to run. It was like a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, and Michael Penix would definitely have picked up the first down if Kayvon didn't trip him up. So that was good to see from him. There was a catch by Neighbors, a short catch, but I wrote it down because this actually broke the rookie catch or reception record in Giants history, passing Odell Beckham and Saquon Barkley, who each had 92 catches in their rookie seasons. I wrote down Daniel Bellinger made a very tough contested catch on 3rd and 1. I kind of forget what happened. I feel like Bellinger was going to his right, and I feel like Jesse Bates was like coming over the top of him to try and swap the ball down, and somehow Bellinger held on to it, so that was like great catching in traffic by him, great body control. Then there was the 3rd and goal, Tyrone Tracy, toe tap, touchdown, Drew Lock rolling to his left. Good job extending that play, and a great job by Tracy to get the feet down. I mentioned before, Drew Phillips had that great wrap-up on Bijan Robinson in the flat. That's honestly, Bijan might be the toughest guy to tackle one-on-one in the flat. Like, I don't think anybody has a jump cut as good as Bijan Robinson right now in the NFL. So for Drew Phillips to do that in the flat, that was really impressive. There was a 3rd and 9 throw to Mooney. He was being chased down by, or not he, it was Penix being chased down by somebody. I forget who it was now on the Giants defensive line. But they created pressure. Penix tried throwing to Mooney on a comeback route. He threw it short, hit the ground. It looked like on the TV view that he caught it, but the ball did hit the ground. So they settled for a 52-yard field goal. And at this point, I'm kind of stressing because the Giants were up 7-0. I wanted them to lose, obviously. And here we go with a 52-yard field goal from Atlanta. And if this guy missed it, which he missed the first one from 43, I'm like, shit, they're going to be up 7-0 with the ball near midfield. Like, this is not going well. But luckily, Riley Patterson, he put an end to his misses, made the 52-yard field goal. There was a 3rd down and short, like a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. It was a very well-designed play by Brian Dable. I believe it was Neighbors in the slot and Wan'Dale out wide, which you would think it was, it should be the opposite. But I think it was Neighbors running like a wheel route, and he somewhat set a pick on Wandale's guy, which is really the play design. You can't pick him too hard because then they'll throw the flag. But he did just like enough to get in Wandale's defender's way. Wandale went underneath and was wide ass open, and Drew Lock made the throw, and he picked up like 15 yards. It was a very nice like design play by Brian Daboll. Unfortunately, though, the next play right after that was a delay of game, which you cannot have. That's just terrible game management by the Giants right there. Jesse Bates then had the 55-yard pick six to make it 10-7 Atlanta. I mentioned that Wan'Dale Robinson was like running a curl. He sat down for a bit, and Drew Lock was just staring it down, which Daniel Jones did this all the time. I couldn't stand it. Drew Lock obviously has many bad habits of his own, so you just cannot do that. Deonte Banks had a pass interference on a deep ball to Mooney downfield on a 3rd and 8, so this would have been a nice defensive stop for the Giants. Instead, Mooney gets the pass interference. Deonte Banks, of course, on the wrong end of that. It looked like a catchable ball, so maybe it was necessary to get in Mooney's way, but I hate when they throw pass interference flags and like the ball's not catchable. Like I saw this literally today watching Red Zone. It happened with somebody. I forget who it was now. But it's like even if the guy wasn't held, there's no way he's catching that ball. But in this case, I feel like, maybe Deonte Banks had to do it, but you have to get in better position, obviously. Then Bijan Robinson had his first of 2 touchdowns, made it a 17-7 Atlanta lead. Eric Gray on the ensuing kickoff had a nice return to the Giants' 41-yard line. Right after that was when Drew Lock had the sack and fumble. Caden Ellis had the forced fumble. Greg Van Roten got beat horribly on that play. But for Drew Lock as well, like obviously for Van Roten, like you cannot do that. Like he just got beat so quickly on that play. But also for Drew Lock, like this is coming from his right side, and just Drew Lock had no clue it was coming. Like he was so oblivious to it. Another thing Daniel Jones was very bad at, especially early in his career. He got better at it, but Daniel Jones, like the first couple years of his career, you could throw guys at him from the right side and he would not see it coming. Like I think back to that Jamal Adams play against the Jets in 2019, where Adams like ripped the ball out of Jones' hands and ran it back for 6. And even I think Marcus Golden did it to Daniel Jones in 2019? I forget when Marcus Golden left the Giants. It might have been 2019, 2020, one of those years, but it happened again. Micah McFadden, he left the game a little before halftime, so obviously Darius Muasau, the rookie, I forget if he's a 5th or a 6th or a 7th round pick. I forget now. He's a late round pick, obviously day 3 guy. I feel like he was a 7th round pick. So Muasau came in, played some more snaps, and he did play pretty well. Penix hit Mooney on an out route on a 3rd and 9 versus Cordell Flott, picked up a first down. I wrote down, idiot Falcons go for it with no timeouts left. They throw it short of the sticks, or short of the end zone, I meant, and Kyle Pitts had the ball bounced off his hands, and Cordell Flott intercepted it. So I do want to go back to what the actual situation was. I'm not a big Raheem Morris guy, the Falcons coach. I've not been too impressed by him. So it was 16 seconds to go. The Falcons were on the Giants' 7-yard line. So at that point, you either have to throw the ball in the end zone or just like throw it out of bounds or just kick the field goal. Like I don't know what they were doing throwing short of the end zone in bounds. Like there's no logic behind that one with no timeouts left. They did it anyway, and then it was intercepted. And there was like a big fight afterwards. It was like Drake London got into it with somebody. I forget who it was on the Giants that got into that. Matthew Judon on one of the first plays of the 3rd quarter had a pick 6. Of course, Matthew Judon's an edge rusher, so you don't want to see that. Greg Van Roten once again got beat horribly on that play. Evan Neal also. I think this was the play where Evan Neal had his face on the ground. Sorry, I'm trying to play the actual play here to watch it. I saw Authentic put this up on Twitter, so shout out to him. But yeah, it was like Evan Neal had his face on the ground by the end of this play. Like Evan Neal went to like take out his guy's knees and just fell into the ground. Like it's so embarrassing. It's like asking Paul Blart Mall Cop to go block somebody at right tackle. This is probably what he would do. It looks like they're going for like a screen pass, but it's not actually a screenplay. I don't know what the right side of the line was doing here. The ball gets batted up, and it gets intercepted right to Judon's hands. It's just like you cannot make this stuff up. So the right side of the line today was pretty atrocious. And yeah, this is bad luck, obviously, to have the ball just land in Judon's hands. And the same thing happened versus Dallas with Overshown. He had that pick 6 where it was very like unfortunate where the ball bounced, because Overshown, like if that ball was hit anywhere else, he probably doesn't have a pick 6, but it was popped up perfectly where he was able to run it back for 6. Same thing happened here, but Van Roten, like this is one of those games where it's like either forget about it or like maybe you're just washed, maybe it's time to retire. He hasn't been like that awful this year, but like this was just an all-time type of bad game here. On the next drive, when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the Giants went 3-and-out, and once again, Evan Neal and Greg Van Roten, they struggled on a third down stunt by the Falcons. They really couldn't pick it up too well, and Drew Lock threw incomplete, so it's another one. Deonte Banks had a really good pass breakup on Drake London on a fade route in the end zone, so like that was one good thing from a Giants young player in this game. And then Bijan Robinson had the walk-in touchdown to make it 31-7. And after that, I stopped taking notes. I said, all right, this shit is over. I mean, I knew at like 20, I think right after that Judon touchdown, it was over, right? I mean, we pretty much knew it. I still wanted to stay invested and look at what was happening. But after that last Bijan touchdown, I was like, all right, we're done here. There's nothing else to watch. I thought Tim Boyle came in at one point, but he didn't. I don't know why. I thought I just saw him pop up on the screen. But as I mentioned, it was a very embarrassing game. Brian Daboll in the media after the game was just saying the same stuff as he always says, that we got to be better and blah, blah, blah. It's just the same stuff every week. It's really a shame what's happening here with this team. But overall, I'm really happy about the Raiders winning. Obviously, that's a big thing for me. I was really invested in that game, especially in the second half. I mean, Aiden O'Connell made this crazy play. I forget if this drive resulted in a touchdown. I forget. It might have. He made like a crazy play. Aiden O'Connell obviously is more of a statue type quarterback. He's not really the most mobile guy, but he like rolled out to his left, got away from a couple guys, then threw it on the sideline to Amir Abdullah, who's like a 5'8" running back who's probably in like his 10th year, and he like mosses this guy on the sidelines. I'm like, oh, this is just meant to be. Like the Raiders are meant to win this game. Like for O'Connell and for Abdullah to be doing this, like yeah, the Raiders were meant to win this game. So they did. I was a little nervous, at one point the Raiders had a blown coverage. Well, first they missed a field goal. It would have put them up 16-7, and at that point versus a shitty Jags team, it's like, all right, that might be all they need to win this game. But of course, Daniel Carlson, normally a great kicker, missed a 43-yard field goal, and I'm thinking, all right, here we go. They're going to lose this effing game. But right after that, the Jaguars' sensational rookie receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., it was a 62-yard touchdown, a complete blown coverage. Don't know what the hell happened, no safety help, and then they were down 14-13. But luckily, Amir Abdullah had a touchdown later, 11:30 to go in the fourth quarter, and that was the game. So at one point, it looked like the Jaguars were going to come back and win the game late. It was going to drive me crazy. It was Mac Jones, too, which really irked me, because last year, Mac Jones was on the wrong end of the Drake May Bowl, of course. He was still the Patriots quarterback at the time. He actually got benched that game for Bailey Zappi, if you guys remember. But Mac Jones had an awful game in MetLife last year in the Drake May Bowl. And I'm thinking, here we go again. This is Mac Jones. Once again, he's going to just screw us over out of a quarterback pick. But luckily, Mac Jones did not get the job done this time. As I've said before, I love the fact that the Giants have the first overall pick. I really do want them to pick the guy they want. I know some people like that aspect of like picking second, because then the choice is made for them, basically. But I would love for the next GM, whether it's Joe Shane or somebody else, hopefully, to get their shot at who they want. I feel like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are pretty different in terms of like their floor, their ceiling, and like their style of play. I really do feel like there's a lot of different ways their careers can go. And I don't know about you guys, but I really do feel like, and this is just me kind of just talking out of my ass, but I really do feel like only one of these quarterbacks is going to hit. I feel like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I just feel like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, one of them is going to be a good starter and the other's going to be a bust. I just don't know who it's going to be. And I could be entirely wrong. It could work out for both of them. Maybe both of them suck. It just feels like one of those guys is going to work out, and maybe I'm just being pessimistic and feel that the one the Giants will take will be the bad one. But I don't know. Like, we'll see how that one plays out, but I just have that feeling for some reason. I wanted to talk about some early stuff from this week that happened. I did mention this a bit in the preview, but as I said, I was pressed for time, so I just wanted to wait for this video to do it. But there was the video released by Talking Giants, I feel like it was about a week ago, with Bobby Skinner, and he made a video saying why Joe Shane should be fired. I actually watched the whole thing. It was a really well done video, so if you haven't watched it, I would recommend it. But apparently, and they wouldn't lie about this, Talking Giants came out and said that the Giants themselves, the organization, called Bobby Skinner and basically complained about that video being up, and basically saying that we're not going to do you guys any favors anymore, which is funny because according to Bobby, like, they don't do many favors anyway for Talking Giants, but that's just another that's another thing. But the fact that this organization, I think it's Pat Hanlon, the guy who's like the head of, I don't know what the actual department is. Oh, he's the Senior Vice President of Communications. All right, so there you go. So that's his job title. And apparently he gave the Talking Giants guys a call because they did not really like that video being out there. And it really does feel like, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because the Giants really want to keep Joe Schoen. Maybe not the Giants as a whole, but it seems like John Mara is really preparing us to see a fourth year of Joe Schoen. There were even articles released, and of course it was Paul Schwartz, who's often like the mouthpiece for John Mara, releasing an article saying that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are not a package deal, and the Giants very well may keep one and fire the other, which obviously would mean that Brian Daboll will be fired, which I think is unfair, considering I think Joe Schoen's had a worse resume since being here. So they would fire Daboll and keep Joe Schoen. So they're releasing this in article form. They're calling out content people that are making videos talking about firing Joe Schoen. The writing's on the wall. This is what they want to do. They want to bring back Joe Schoen. I really do feel John Mara thinks that Joe Schoen is like this genius and that they have struck gold here, and they love his process and they love how innovative he is, which he's probably not that innovative. He's just way more modernized than the last guy. So anyone you compare to Dave Gettleman, I've said this before, anyone you compare to Dave Gettleman is going to look very good because Dave Gettleman was like stuck in the 80s. So anyone you get now that operates in a modern way is going to look like a great GM that has a great mindset and great philosophy. Obviously, Joe Schoen's done nothing here where you're like, oh, that was amazing. Like, wow, which GM would do that? It just helps him that he was compared to Gettleman, who had no idea how to operate in the NFL during the time he was the GM. And I still don't know if they're going to fire Schoen. It really, according to like Jordan Ronan and people who cover the team, like it feels like it's 50-50. I just don't know how you can keep him and feel good about it, because obviously they're going to fire Daboll. I don't really see how they keep him at this point. They're going to make the same mistake they did in 2017, basically, it was 2015, when they fired Coughlin, they kept Jerry Reese. Then they did the same thing with Gettleman, and they kept him and fired Pat Shurmur. Like, they just don't keep guys on the same timeline, which should be the right thing to do. You should want to keep your head coach and GM on the same timeline in an ideal situation. There might be some situations where like it doesn't work out like that, and maybe it works out perfectly, but I do think in a perfect world, you would like to keep these guys on the same timeline. I always viewed Daboll and Schoen as a package deal. I don't know why, but I feel like coming from the same organization, them knowing each other, them being hired in the same month, it just felt like these guys should be tied at the hip. So it seems like for Joe Schoen to keep his job, it seems like Brian Daboll will be the scapegoat, which I don't think is fair. I think what Brian Daboll did in 2022 was incredible. And to bring that roster, which really was not that good, to the playoffs and win a playoff game, it says a lot about Brian Daboll as a head coach. Obviously, Daboll has regressed ever since, and he has not had the most talent to deal with, and having a quarterback room of Daniel Jones, and Tyrod Taylor was pretty good as a Giant, but Tim Boyle, Drew Lock, the whole quarterback room since he's been here has been atrocious. Like, the best by far has been Tyrod Taylor. I mean, you can say Daniel Jones in 2022, it was very gimmicky. It obviously didn't last very long. Teams caught on to how to defend that team. But I really do feel like based on 2022, it felt like Brian Daboll has accomplished more with the Giants than Joe Schoen has. And I'll do my video about this at some point. I'll make my for and against keeping and firing Joe Schoen video at some point in the next couple weeks, but that day is coming. Like, Black Monday's coming soon. It should be here, in like 2 or 3 weeks, so we're getting there. And thinking about some of the top head coaching candidates for this upcoming coaching cycle, I mean, we'll see which coaches are fired. Of course, that could matter as well. But it seems like Ben Johnson, who's been the OC from the Lions since 2022, he's up there. Mike Vrabel, of course, the Titans coach from 2018 to 2023. Liam Cohen, the Rams OC in 2022. He is the Bucs OC currently. Joe Brady, the LSU former. He wasn't OC, I feel like, in LSU. Maybe he was eventually, but the year they were very good, the Joe Burrow year, I think that was 2019. I feel like he had a different job title. It was either like quarterback coach or like offensive something. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't exactly OC. And he's been the Bills' offensive coordinator now for the past year and a half. And of course, Todd Monken, possibly, who's been the Baltimore Ravens OC the past 2 years. But of course, I get a little concerned about that because how much of that is Lamar Jackson being Lamar Jackson, I don't know. But he has been an improvement since the other OC in Baltimore, which was Greg Roman. And then you're looking at quarterback for the Giants next year. It seems like especially if they get the first overall pick, it will be either Sanders or Ward. But even like the free agent class is not great. Like Sam Darnold's brought up before. We saw how Sam Darnold worked out in New York. I'm sure he's better now than he was back with the Jets, but Sam Darnold being here would not excite me too much. I really do feel a lot of it is the system, and Kevin O'Connell's great with quarterbacks, and having Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, like, it helps a lot. And even when you watch Darnold now, like, yes, he's impressive, but there are definitely throws he misses. There's times where you're like, oh, that's the old Sam Darnold. So, like, I'm not fully convinced that he's just done a complete 180 and this is like the new Sam Darnold. I could see Darnold going to a bad team next year and like regressing to the same player he used to be, but I guess that's a wait and see. There's also other things we would love to change about the Giants, like the fact that Tim McDonald, who's like John Mara's nephew, he's been there for like 12 years now. He keeps getting promoted. He's now the director of player personnel. I mean, a guy who obviously is related to the Maras and has not really done anything great. The Giants have been asked the past 12 years. For that guy to keep getting promoted because he's John Mara's nephew, it's a pretty awful look. Then you have Chris Mara still in the organization. Apparently he's more hands-off as of 2 years ago, but we'll never actually know, really. Even a guy like Kevin Abrams, who's been there for 26 years now. I'm not saying Kevin Abrams has much influence on what they do from a personnel standpoint, but why can't they just get new faces in there? There are definitely smart people that understand the cap. I've seen people on Twitter that understand the cap very well. You can't bring somebody in there that like is just a new voice, new face. Like, they keep bringing in the same people over and over again that have been there the past 10, 20 years. And like, the Giants have been so awful the past 12 years or so. I felt much more confident about there being a complete overhaul in 2021, which we did get. We did get guys from an outside organization in the Buffalo Bills, right? We got Dable, we got Shane, but it didn't work out. It doesn't mean it was bad process. It was still the right move, I feel like. I mean, as I've said before, I would have hired Adam Peters, but it also made sense to kind of link Brian Dable with a GM that he already knows in Joe Shane, so I get that. I still think Joe Shane is much better than Dave Gettleman in terms of how to run a team, but you can also argue that Dave Gettleman, in some cases, was a better talent evaluator than Dave Gettleman was. I think you can fairly say that. I think we also need to really hold Joe Shane accountable for the quarterback room, which is something I ranted about maybe like 3-4 games ago. It's just bad how you would have this quarterback room going into a season where Jones was coming off a neck injury for the second time. Not just like, it was like a pretty serious neck injury. Like, one of those required surgery, maybe both, and a torn ACL. So he comes off both of those, and you had the concerns that maybe Daniel Jones just sucks. That was definitely a concern for many people coming into this year. I mean, I was pretty on board with like Jones not being good, obviously, but the fact that they would back him up with Drew Lock, who I admittedly like. I do like Drew Lock. I think he's an exciting player, but he's not that good either. But you had other guys sitting out there, whether it be Jameis Winston or Sam Darnold. We all know they had a shot at Russell Wilson. They would not guarantee him even to compete for the starting job. If it was me, a GM, I would have said, hey, Russ, you can come in and start from day one. Joe Shane, for some reason, was like, nope, we're not going to give you a shot. This is Daniel Jones' team, but feel free to sign anyway. Russell Wilson held up the middle finger and said, nope, I'm leaving. I cannot blame him for that. It's just very poor handling of the most important position in sports. And I do think the guy that put that room together should be held accountable, and that is Joe Shane. You cannot keep finger pointing and say this was all Daniel Jones' fault. Was he a big part of it? Absolutely. I think Daniel Jones sucks and he held this team back big time. But the roster that Joe Shane put together is also not good enough, right? There's a reason why the Jets, even when they got Zach Wilson at the second overall pick, that's a very high pick, right? Second overall pick. They essentially wasted a second overall pick on Zach Wilson. The reason that team, the Jets, was still good enough to attract a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers and still be a team expected to do well. Like, the Jets, honestly, they should have done better. They have, I think, more talent than they would need. I think their coaching is horrendous. But the point is, like, they still whiffed on the second overall pick in Zach Wilson, but the rest of their roster was good enough, thanks to Joe Douglas and whoever else was there with the Jets putting that team together. And I'm not saying we should follow the Jets. They're an absolute clown show. They might be worse than the Giants in that regard. But the point is, even with the signing of Daniel Jones, if Joe Shane had just drafted better and signed free agents better, this situation would not be looked at as badly. Let's say the Giants had Russell Wilson right now, right? If they had Russell Wilson, let's say they drafted better. This team might have had 7 or 8 wins this year, maybe more. And there's no way that their jobs would be on the line right now. But for some reason, not for some reason, it's obvious. Like, they put together the worst quarterback room. They have not drafted well, and here they are sitting at 2 wins, right? I don't think many people coming into this year thought that there would be a scenario where Brian Daboll and or Joe Schoen would be fired after 2024. And now it seems like a real possibility, especially for Daboll, to be gone because the team they put together is that bad. We should not even be at this point. It just shows you how bad they have to be to get to 2 wins. Obviously, I'm very curious to see how these next 2 weeks play out. Whether it be, do the Giants lose to the Colts, which I do think they will. I feel like the Colts must have had like 250, 300 rushing yards today with no Dexter Lawrence and like no run defense, really. I mean, the Giants' run defense has not been as bad as you would think, given the guys they've lost on defense. But when you have a Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson duo, they're so good at running. Like, they must have had, I think Jonathan Taylor alone had 209 rushing yards today. So as long as they control the ball and don't do anything stupid, I do feel like the Colts will win that game with relative ease. And then you have a game at Philly in the final week of the year, which it did suck that the Eagles lost today because it kind of gives them less incentive to try the final week of the year. But there's also a scenario where Jalen Hurts, due to his concussion, misses next week. And at that point, if you're the Eagles, do you really want Jalen Hurts to go like 3 full weeks without playing an NFL game leading into the playoffs? So I do think because of maybe he'll miss next week, they might just force Jalen Hurts to play the final week because you don't want Jalen Hurts starting a playoff game with like 3 weeks of not playing football, if you know what I mean. I definitely explained that very poorly, but the point is he might be very rusty and just not up to speed once the playoffs begin, especially if Hurts does not clear the concussion protocol to face the Cowboys next week. So there is no spread on the Giants-Eagles game for week 18, at least that I can see right now. But being a 8.5 point dog to a pretty bad Colts team, they're not like terrible, but they're below average, I would say. To be a plus 8.5 there, especially at home, is a rough look. So honestly, yeah, I still feel good about the Giants finishing this year with 2 wins. It feels like that's what's going to happen, and I'm all for it. Oh man, that was a rough drop by Sterling Shepard right there. 4th down and 3. He just was wide ass open and dropped it. That's a shame. But anyway, I also wanted to touch on this last thing. I really don't think, and I said this in the preview video, I said this yesterday before the game even started, because a lot of stuff that happens is predictable based on how people react to things. I don't think Michael Penix looking really good today means that the Giants messed up and made the wrong choice in April. Did I want them to draft a quarterback? Yes, I absolutely did, right? I've said that on record plenty of times. But I also don't think Michael Penix playing well means that the Giants entirely messed up. Malik Neighbors is on his way to a 100 catch, 1,000 plus yard season. He's going to get there. And just because Penix had one good game where the stats don't even look that great, he was 18 of 27 for 202 yards, no touchdowns, and then the one pick that was not his fault. But stats are stats. So I don't watch this game and say, well, Joe Schoen's a moron. You should have taken Penix. You see all these throws he's making? Like, the Giants secondary freaking sucks. Let's just be honest here. Now, if Michael Penix, in let's say he finishes out this year, which he will, has 3 more starts, and let's say like the first month of next season in 2025, the guy is like playing at an elite level. Maybe at that point we'll say, all right, Joe Schoen fucked up. But for right now, one start into his career, I'm not ready to say like, oh, Joe Schoen messed up big time. Should have taken Penix. I don't know. Like, Penix can A, get hurt, which is definitely possible given his record or his track record, and B, he just might not be great. He might be. I'm not, I really do think, and I will say this, just what I saw today with the ball placement and everything and how like calm he was, especially for his first start. If they have an offensive line for him, which right now it seems like they do, Penix will be a really good quarterback. I don't know if he'll be top 5. I don't see that. He'll maybe flirt with like top 10. I feel like Matthew Stafford's a good comp for him. Like, Matthew Stafford was always flirting with top 10. I had him top 10. Like, for me, myself, I always liked Matt Stafford, or Matthew Stafford as he likes to be called. But Penix feels like if they put the right guys around him, he can be like that type of career. A strong arm quarterback, for the most part, a pocket guy, can run if he has to, and he was putting the ball on guys today. Like, some of the throws he made today were great. Even some of the drops they had, like that Drake London throw, which was only a few yards, but it was placed perfectly. London dropped it. He had a couple of deep crossers to Mooney that were perfectly placed right between the numbers, or it's only, he wears number 1, so right at the 1. So you see things like that. If you're a Falcons fan, it makes you very encouraged, and I do think the Falcons at least have their guy for the next few years. Just depends if he can stay healthy and keep playing at a high level. But it doesn't matter how I feel about that. It matters what John Mara feels about it. If John Mara watched Michael Penix today, which he did, he was there. The camera went to John Mara at one point. As I said, he looked pretty disgusted. If John Mara feels like, man, this Penix guy is good, because I'm sure John Mara is not grinding like Washington tape watching Michael Penix, but being in the crowd, if he liked what he saw from Penix and sits there like, wait, we passed on this guy? Like, why? So maybe John Mara can look at that, and maybe that can somewhat, it's a very small thing, but maybe somewhat influence his decision on whether to keep Joe Shane or not. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. The Giants are in a great spot right now. Just two more L's and we're there. And I do feel bad for the Raiders. I really do. Like, it's great you won, right? We love culture wins in this society, but to drop to the 6th overall pick now, behind teams like Cleveland, who may take a quarterback, Tennessee, who may take a quarterback, to fall behind them now, it is bad. I really do feel bad for the Raiders. Like, are they supposed to run back Aiden O'Connell for year 3? Are they supposed to trade up the entire, their entire future to get Cam Ward or Shador Sanders at number 2 overall? Like, they may have to do that now because of this quote-unquote meaningless win. So I'm just happy the Giants are incompetent enough to get the first pick, hopefully, and not have to trade their future to get a quarterback in a pretty fishy quarterback class to begin with. So anyway, hope you guys enjoy it. As I said, happy holidays, stay safe, and I appreciate all those who have stayed with me throughout the year and really keep watching this team for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't even know why I do it, but still, we do it anyway. But hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time.